Well, during the week, the highest decision-making organ of the opposition People's Democratic Party, PDP, asked the federal government to hold a brainstorming national security meeting with all Nigerians who can help it tackle the killings and insecurity in the country. Arise political editor Sam Nasamba has the details.
PDP, which is Nigeria's former ruling party, says the worsening insecurity calls for concerted efforts to get the best brains, irrespective of party affiliation, to tackle insurgency, banditry, kidnapping and other security challenges. At this meeting of its highest decision-making organ in Abuja, the PDP is asking the governing All Progressives Congress to discard its ego and tap into available security expertise within its fold and elsewhere to help tackle insecurity in a bipartisan manner.
It is no longer politics, and we want to call on Mr. President that this has nothing to do with politics. It is a serious matter, more serious than ever before, that he needs to declare. Number one, he needs to declare a national state of emergency on security.
I decided not to speak because I knew that if I spoke, the spin masters in the villa will say it is the opposition. And so we let the APC people speak. And you could see that some of them even shed tears and fall short, just a little short of calling for the impeachment of the president.
Bauchi State Governor Bala Mohammed, while speaking for PDP governors, says though the opposition will not fail to hold the ruling APC to account, issues of insecurity requires a united front as a country.
The time now is to come together. We need to unify the country. There is a lot of disparaging forces and we cannot afford. The insecurity is too much. The mismanagement of the economy is too much. Upon that, if poverty is added to it, I don't know what will become of Nigeria. The federal security architecture has failed. It would appear that nobody is in charge, and somebody has to be in charge. And we have to work together to help the federal government discharge its exclusive responsibility of providing safety and security.
NEC also urged President Buhari to, without delay, convoke a national conference on security so as to galvanize ideas and options that will enable our nation to tackle insecurity.
The PDP National Executive Committee at the emergency meeting also took some critical decisions, such as approving 5 out of 6 of its zonal congresses recently conducted, except that of the Northwest. Also, an e-registration committee was set up to register interested Nigerians willing to join the party electronically, including a vote of confidence on the Uche Secondus-led National Working Committee. Somna Sambu, Arise News.
Well, thank you so much, Somna Sambu, for that report. And now let's bring in Arise News analyst, Dr. Sam Amadi. He joins us now to take a look at all these developments, especially as it has to do with security, because that's the biggest issue right now. Every Nigerian you meet on the street is concerned about what is going on, because it seems like there's no part of, no region, no zone in the country is safe. But let's look at this call for a national security dialogue, and let's marry that with even the House of Representatives calling for a state of emergency that should be declared. Do you think, this is a way forward in terms of getting a lasting solution to the current situation in the country?
Well, I think the responses are the right one, kind of underline the importance of some kind of strategic and effective action. But let's take it one by one. If you look at the idea of a national conference, instead of emergency first, what does that mean? If it means more serious executive attention, if it means that the government prioritizes security and put it on the front burner, that's fine. But oftentimes, by the way, we've been talking about the question of emergency on everything. But the question is, what does that mean? So if you look at this government, it doesn't seem like they're able to bring more energy in terms of attention, resources, strategy, tactics to deal with the problem. So you can declare a national emergency, but if you don't have a kind of conceptual framework to deal with the problem, some are technical. For example, this equipment, they did for maybe mercenaries at this point. The seemingly low morale of our military, of our both security organizations. Also the politicization, loss of professionalism. You don't create that by a national emergency. You have to create that by retooling the institution. And of course, if a government doesn't show that level of professionalism, that's a problem. Now, but there's something the PDP said that we should look at. You see, the idea of a summit It's not to develop strategies to solve the problem of insecurity. Those are technical issues. But insecurity is driven largely now by a sense of disconnection between the people and the state. So if you look at banditry, if you look at kidnapping, the police and the security agencies are not receiving the kind of communal support. They have been alleged to be ethnicized. You can hear some people talking about the police themselves being the enemy. That's why the non-government and all those phenomena across the country of targeting police institutions, because there is a sense of dislocation. We saw what happened in Odua, the southwest, a few days ago, where there was a massive rally in, I think, Ondo, Ogun State, also called Odua Republic. We see what's going on in the southeast. So the idea of a national summit is not to develop technical solutions that it can't get by a national conference, is to recreate a sense of social trust for the Nigerian government. What's driving insecurity, apart from the issues of poverty, of arms supply, illicit arm trading, porous borders, and of course the work of the terrorist group from the Sahel and Maghreb. Yeah. But the real driver here is the loss of legitimacy of the Nigerian state in terms of how the people view the state. The contention around Nigeria in terms of ethnic, religious contentions. So what does have done that Nigerian state is becoming big in terms of acquiring power, but becoming ineffective and illegitimate where it matters, where the people are. So you can see the police, a big organization, but ineffective because there's little sense of governance and a sense of social trust. I think that's what the idea of national conference, to recreate support for the Nigerian state, to deal with the issues of injustice that is driving this discontent.
Even though if most of the content will not be addressed later, because we had the national confab in 2014.
No, and the point is, it's a nullity. He didn't implement it. He threw it over the bar, and issues are the same coming up. So the question is, if you don't deal with those adaptive challenges, which is, how do people regard their state? Now, look at the U.S. as organized as it is. The political division is driving capital attack. It's not just a technical problem. It's a political problem because it's a problem of people who are disillusioned to the point of arising against the state.
Disillusion, or that the president himself was goading them in a very wrong direction. But that's for America to deal with.
Yeah.
I was going to continue on the discussion of, I'm just trying to get that. But let me go on to what really is driving the insecurity. Now you have some divides. Some are saying it's sponsored. Some are saying it's self-determination. Some are saying some other things. Yeah. What really do you think is driving the spate of increase in insecurity? And then how do we begin to, handle it, especially with the proliferation of weapons? I'm just wondering, there seems to be so many weapons around. Okay, yeah, some people are saying that politicians did not stay true to their promise to those they used during the election, so the people are fighting back.
Well, that's a small part of that crisis. You see, every form of insecurity is a failure of governance, either in terms of providing socio-economic goods. So people talk about poverty driving insecurity. That's a failure of governance at the economic sense. It could be a sense of injustice and anger against the state. So when people are killing police officers, not in an attempt to commit crime, watch it. They're not killing police officers because they want to go and rob a bank. They're killing them as an end in itself. That's a war against the state. And what creates that is a sense of injury, whether right or wrong, perceived or misplaced. Now, when banditry runs across the state and the police can't stop or prevent them, then that's a case of failure of governance. It shows that even though we have centralized policing, we don't have effective footprint, effective boots on the ground where it matters. And that's the core we're talking about, police reform. Now, quickly, the government has not responded to the challenge of the inadequacy of policing system, because obviously the police is not getting the job done. Now, can you decentralize strategically in a way that you create more effectiveness at local level where these crises are going on? Yes, you can, but you're not doing that. So the notion of a national conference, I will change to say, can we now begin to seriously deal with those things we can manage, which is political crisis, reform issues, and then beef up competence in terms of technology, in terms of military hardwares, and in terms of intelligence. Okay, fine. You're talking about AFRICOM. In 2015 years, under Yaradua, I was a foreign affairs advisor. We fought against AFRICOM in Africa because of the idea of not being, a patronage of the U.S. Now the president says, AFRICOM, come and sit at the center. Now AFRICOM, and American says, look, the Nigerian political, the UK says it's complex. American says Nigeria knows what to do. Now, what is that knows what to do is that they are saying, look, this crisis is not just technical.
Is that sort of an indictment?
It's an indictment and also a prescription. They are saying, look, there's a political side to this crisis. There's a failing state in terms of loyalty. And so whether it is IPOB, ECN, whether it is the banditry in the north, or Boko Haram, or even Odua, it's a sense in which many companies of Nigeria don't have that implicit trust.
Well, Dr. Amadi, we have less than a minute to wrap this up. I do know that there was a National Security Council meeting over the weekend. Of course, there's another one that will happen again on Tuesday. How should the presidency be handling this spiraling insecurity across the nation?
Very good point. It looks minute. Now, optics. I was in the Southeast for an MBA conference, and lawyers are saying you have a National Security Council meeting and people from only one geopolitical zones are there. That's also important. Optics is important in governance. And that's the area where that's what the Constitution talk about spread. You create a sense of belonging. That's number one. Number two is that, look, the crisis is that there's also the idea that there's so much that the state know to do that they're not doing. People talk about, for example, how come our militaries are always
I don't want to stop you, but I want to get this in under
Yeah.
30 seconds. It was what I was trying to remember.
Yeah.
The question of emergency. What does it really mean? State of emergency. What will it look like?
Constitutionally, when we've had it in the Kitty and elsewhere, it means truncating democratic governance, appointing a sole administrator, but you have to go to the National Assembly and get a declaration and approve a resolution. But essentially, it didn't say you do that, but from history, Nigerian state of emergency has meant truncating democratic rule. But the emergency can be that government can institute some extraordinary measures.
Well,
and still
state of emergency declared on
the
educational
civil
sector.
governance.
We haven't seen any
That's
far-reaching results. But Dr. Sam Amadi, thank you so much for joining us.